When everyone else saw a giant too big to fight, David saw a target too big to miss. This is a story about a very big problem, a giant named Goliath. Goliath was over 9 feet tall, covered in heavy bronze armor, and carried a massive spear. He was the Philistines' champion, and every day he challenged Israel's army to send out a fighter. His voice thundered across the valley of Elah, daring anyone to face him. But Israel's soldiers, including King Saul, were paralyzed by fear. For 40 days, Goliath mocked them, and no one dared to step forward. The Israelites saw only the giant, his size, his strength, his threats. Fear made the problem look even bigger. They forgot their own strength, their training, and most importantly, their God. The giant filled their vision, and courage shrank with every taunt. No one moved. No one fought. The army stood frozen, letting fear decide their fate. Far from the battlefield, a young shepherd named David watched over his father's sheep. David was the youngest of 8 sons, but he had a heart full of courage. He'd already faced lions and bears to protect his flock, armed only with a staff and sling. One day, his father sent him to deliver food to his brothers at the battlefield. When David arrived, he heard Goliath's challenge and saw the fear in Israel's army. But David felt something different, anger that anyone would defy the living God. He remembered how God had helped him defeat wild animals. David saw not an unbeatable giant, but a man defying God. He asked, "Who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His brothers dismissed him, but David's faith was unshaken. He knew the size of the giant didn't matter, only the size of his God. David saw the situation through faith, not fear. He saw a target too big to miss. David's words reached King Saul, who was desperate for a champion. David stood before the king and said, "Let no one lose heart. I will fight him." Saul saw only a boy, not a warrior, and doubted David's chances. But David told Saul about fighting lions and bears as a shepherd. He wasn't boasting. He was testifying to God's help. "The Lord who rescued me from the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine," David declared. David's confidence was in God, not himself. Saul saw the faith in David's eyes and finally agreed. "Go," Saul said, "and the Lord be with you." David was ready to face the giant. Saul tried to dress David in his own armor, but it was too heavy and unfamiliar. David chose instead his staff, sling, and 5 smooth stones from the stream. He walked out to face Goliath, who mocked him for coming with a stick. Goliath cursed David and threatened to feed him to the wild animals, but David stood firm, unafraid. "You come against me with sword and spear," David shouted, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." This battle wasn't about David versus Goliath. It was about Goliath versus God. David declared that victory would come from God, not weapons. He turned the fight over to God, trusting completely. Goliath saw only a boy, but David's faith was his true weapon. The armies watched as the shepherd and the giant faced off. The outcome would change everything. The battle was about to begin. The time for talk was over. Goliath advanced, but David ran toward him, reaching for a stone. With practiced skill, David loaded his sling and let the stone fly. The stone struck Goliath's forehead, the only unprotected spot. The giant fell, face down, defeated in a single moment. The Philistines fled in fear. Israel's army surged forward in victory. David's courage turned the tide for an entire nation. This story is more than a battle. It's a lesson for us all. We all face giants, fear, worry, problems that seem too big. Like David, we can choose faith over fear. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. With faith, no giant is too big to fall.